I'll just...
Oh, lights on.
Okay, so...
Hello, folks, and welcome to the release party for my autobiography, Tales of Demon Conjuring, Mind Control, and Madness. I'm Blood Ritual Monarch, and we're broadcasting live from New Zealand. It's Sunday afternoon here, and I suspect Saturday evening or Saturday night where you are, and I even missed church for this event, so it'll have to be good. We do apologize for the technical issues, but we do have a very interesting event planned, and your participation will definitely enhance the experience. So we're going to explain how to log into chat if you're not logged in already. And how do we log into chat?
So we go to the home screen.
So go to the home screen, and on the left-hand side you'll see a tab for home. Hover your cursor over home, and then you'll see live event. Click on that, and then that will lead you to the chat room. Correct. And hopefully you're logging in now. By the way, we do have a winner of our autographed copy of the book. It's James.
James Bonifant.
James Bonifant. James, are you there? Congratulations, man. What we're going to be doing is the books are going to be coming from the States here to New Zealand, and then I'm going to autograph and then send right away to you. It could take up to a month because it does take a couple of weeks going across the ocean. So rest assured you will be getting that. Appreciate your patience. So what we're going to do today is, while we're fielding questions from chat, we'll be going over the book itself, the genesis of the book, how it came into being, and then also going over the chapters themselves, just a brief summary of the chapters. But once again, the more questions you ask, the more interesting it'll be. So definitely get involved, and we'll begin. So James is there? Okay, and how the book came into being, I'm not quite sure if you've been reading my blog, but it did explain what I had gone through for about 15 years with blackouts and all sorts of problems psychologically. And when I did move to New Zealand, the issues continued. But I woke up after a particularly bad blackout, and my organs were hurting, and I knew I had been drinking too much, and I couldn't continue my lifestyle in that fashion. So my fiance suggested I start writing as a way to vent whatever issues I had. And so I started the blog, and then after about 6-7 months, I realized I had enough material for a book, and that's when the whole idea for the book came into being. And that took several more months of pretty fervent, obsessive, getting up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, writing, editing, and getting off to work. And it was pretty exhausting process. But now the book is here after many different versions. So we've got a flesh and blood book here. And James, as we said, you're going to be the first one. The next 2 folks to log into chat will receive free Kindle copies of the book. And I'm here with Louise, my fiance, who started all of this and who's also the technical expert. So she'll be chiming in and giving me advice because I'm a bit too old for this stuff. So, and also she's here to field questions as well. If you'd like to know what it's like to live with me and get an honest opinion from someone other than myself, because obviously I'll paint the picture in a much rosier fashion, because who wouldn't? So what we'll do is we'll start by going over the chapters of the book, and I'll explain that a little bit. The first chapter itself is called The Demon's Call, and I was about 23 at the time, and I was into bodybuilding. I was obsessed with that. I was a night shift security guard, and I knew that I had to take steroids to compete on the professional level. And anything that I did and still do is very much to the extreme. I should get questions cut in. So I knew that I had to take steroids, and my addictive nature would take over, and I would likely die at a very young age. So I prepared myself for the afterlife because I knew I'd be meeting it much sooner than most folks. That was my thinking at the time, to the best of my recollection. So what I did is I started reading about the afterlife. The first book was Hans Holzer. It's called something of the life after. I can't remember. I remember the author though. So I read Holzer's book. It was on spiritual mediumship, And then I found myself getting obsessed with the subject. And then I went off to the bookstore. I think it was Barnes and Noble or Borders. And in a matter of weeks, I was actually buying up all sorts of books on magic, Aleister Crowley, and then it went into satanic stuff. And I was very curious to see if there were entities or other beings on other dimensional levels. So I decided to summon demonic energies, not to hurt anyone with them, but just to see if they existed. It was more of a scientific experiment for me. So I happened upon a book called the Goetia, which is a grimoire or a magical spell book, if you will, to evoke demonic energies, to bring them into the third dimension of the physical sphere, at least as much as they could manifest. So I built a conjuring mirror per the book, and once that was built, it took several weeks to build, and quite a bit of craftsmanship expertise that I didn't have, so I asked my dad to help out with it. I had some friends help out as well. The mirror was a white triangular shape of wood, and it had a black mirror in the middle that was spray painted. And the theory behind that is that the black spray paint, the black mirror itself, because it was dark, would allow the entities to manifest. That's to the best of my recollection. A lot of you folks might be much more versed in magic than I am. After my negative experiences, I avoided it completely. So this is just based on recall, and I'm definitely not an expert magician. I had some bad experiences, and they lasted for quite a long time, so I didn't attempt to evoke spirits after that. At the beginning, when I did the evocation rituals, nothing happened, quite honestly. I don't think I had the psychic sensitivity to pick up on the whatever was manifesting. So I thought I didn't get any results, nothing was happening. So I decided to continue the experiments. And I did the conjuring rituals for weeks and weeks on end, thinking that, okay, if nothing happens, I'm just going to keep doing it until it does happen. And then things started to happen. My bed started to shake. I felt invisible hands on me. The room would get ice cold. One particular thing that did occur was that my thought patterns, I became very negative, very angry. My thoughts were just clouded with doom and gloom and a kind of a vicious rage. And that was one thing that I realized many years later, was that the entities were affecting me on a mental level. I think even before I started the conjuring experiments. So with the bed shaking and things happening, my roommates would come into the room. They'd lie on the bed, and as the bed shook, they would get freaked out and leave the room and became afraid of me. And one even slept with a knife next to his bed. I was never a violent person, but anyway, it wasn't going on just in my head. Let's put it that way. So after those experiments, and this kind of created a slipstream of sorts. I stopped the conjuring experiments after I was invisibly sodomized, for lack of a better way to describe it. I was being touched, and I felt like I was, being raped at night. Obviously, that stopped the conjuring experiments, but it didn't stop the experiences themselves. Things continued to touch me, and of course, the issues in the bedroom continued as well. So my roommates moved out, and sure enough, I had some strange folks move in. In the meantime, I did meet a woman at a party, and we had quite an interesting exchange. And then she lived in New York, so she went back to New York. Ultimately, she moved back to live with me, and I married her. I'll get into that in a little bit, but let's just say that the energies were quite intense, and I couldn't stop it. So once again, my roommates moved out, and then some OTO folks moved in. That's the Ordo Templi Orientis, and that's a fraternal organization founded by Aleister Crowley. If any of you know Crowley, I'm sure many of you do. And these folks moved in, and they were seriously freaky. And then I moved out very shortly thereafter. I left all of my furniture behind, everything. It was just too freaky for me. And the only thing I took with me was the table that I used to summon the spirits. So I took that table with me, which is a makeshift altar, and brought that along. And little did I realize that the energy of the table, was going to affect me for quite a long time afterwards. So I moved in with the woman that I met at the party, and quite a bit occurred after that. And then we were together for several years. And then what occurred after that was we had seen the movie Fight Club together. Fight Club, as many of you might know, has heavy mind control symbolism, mind control triggers, if mind control even exists, I don't know. But Fight Club cracked a mental dam of sorts in my mind, and as a result, I started blacking out. And these blackouts occurred intermittently at first. I would just wake up. I would drink too much, wake up the next day, and of course be in big trouble with my wife-to-be. She was pretty freaked out by it, but we were young and crazy, and just kind of wrote it off at the beginning. But that movie just obsessed me. I went to go see Fight Club numerous times, at least 6, 7 times. Every Friday after work, I'd get paid, and I'd go see Fight Club. So the blackouts, once again, they were intermittent. I wouldn't say that they were happening each and every weekend. I wasn't seeking them out. They were just kind of happening to me versus wanting them to happen, which would occur much later. And during that period, I was trying to find ways to get my Kundalini to activate, because the Kundalini is an energy center in your spine, and I was trying to get that to activate again because it had occurred when I first started summoning the demons, and it was quite a blissful experience. So what I did was I tried to find any way I could to get that to happen on a regular basis. And basically, when your Kundalini rises, you go into the spirit realm and you have visions. So I wanted that to happen. I was rather obsessed with it, and I knew that somehow spiders were connected to that. And you might be thinking, how is that possible? But I did get some tarantulas, African baboon tarantulas, and because I was afraid of them, and that was my mindset at the time, go into anything that scares you. So with the tarantulas, I meditated next to them, and I thought that somehow this fear might be connected to my issues or my obsession with the spirit world. And there was one particular evening where I was going into a blackout, and I cut myself and fed the blood to the spiders, hoping that somehow I would connect with them or commune with them. That was my line of thinking at the time. That was a pretty extreme event. I almost had to get stitches, and still have the scar today. But that was the beginning of a downward spiral of blackouts and all sorts of behavior. I'd be cutting myself, wiping the blood on walls, crying. It was a pretty difficult time, and it didn't stop for almost 15 years. Then I moved into a house in Rhode Island with my ex. Well, she's my ex now. And then what ensued was just continuous blackouts. Every weekend I would seek to black out and to escape my body, to escape some kind of turmoil that was within. All I knew was that I needed to do it. I needed to black out. So that was something I would just obsess on. I'd work all week. I had a commute from Rhode Island to Boston, which was 4 hours round trip. Pretty crazy, I know. One would think, why not just get a job in Rhode Island? But very routine oriented, and I didn't want to change things. So I would go to work. I didn't black out during the week, and on the weekends I would drink heavily and just disappear. This went on for about, I would say, 2010 was when I contacted a deprogrammer. I was reading this book about mind control, which I didn't realize also had a connection to demonology. It was just another subject that I happened upon online, became obsessed with it, and was seeking out books on mind control. So I was reading this book that had all these symptoms on the back. Do flashing lights affect you? Do you have experiences with energies? Do you have alien abduction experiences? All sorts of symptoms that were on the back of the book. And I thought maybe my issue was mind control. I don't know how I made the connection, because it didn't mention demons too much. So I decided to compile all of my life information and send it to this guy to see what he thought. And in the beginning, I was a bit apprehensive because I didn't want to be embarrassed about it. You're just surfing too many, mind control websites. There's nothing wrong with you. That's what I thought he might say. So I finally put, all of this together, and then I emailed it to him for a consultation. And when he came back to me, it was shocking. I mean, he said that I was definitely under heavy mind control. I can't prove that. I certainly can't prove it. But he said I was mind controlled, and all of my issues with demon conjuring, all of my issues with blacking out, cutting myself. I mean, I would go into these states. I'd wake up from blackouts with candles lit. I would wake up with blood on the walls, the word Lucifer written, all sorts of freaky stuff that you might think is outrageous, so you don't believe it, but that's what happened for quite a long time. So when I got this back from this consultation back, I was just shocked, and I thought, okay, maybe this is what's wrong with me. How can I fix it? But at the same time, I needed the blackouts. I needed to go into these states because I was too uncomfortable in my own skin. So it was a tough spot for me. I wanted to be healthier psychologically, but at the same time, I needed the blackouts. So I didn't know how to reconcile the two. This person and I, this deprogrammer, we began a friendship. We emailed 5, 6, 7 times a day. I told him everything about me, my entire life. And he didn't try to sell me anything. He was very good about that. I thought maybe he had an agenda, but he was just a very good person, very supportive. But after about 8 months, I got to a point where I was blacking out much, much worse after I received this information that I had possibly had mind control programming. And as a result, it got so bad, I would send him such crazy emails that he had to back away in the communication. And he stopped talking to me because he knew I was just off the rails and out of control. Several weeks after that, I lost it. I mean, my ex came in one day. She was very upset, and I left. I packed my bags and left. I couldn't stay in that marriage anymore. I was very unhappy in it. I moved into my office at work and started sleeping on the floor, which I thought I could never do and wouldn't be brave enough to do that. So I lived on the floor for about a month, and then I found an apartment, and I started fresh. Unfortunately, I also was drinking even more heavily then because I didn't have someone I was living with giving me the evil eye about drinking too much. So I wasn't managing my drinking at all, and it got much, much worse. I moved into an old schoolhouse that was renovated into apartments, and it was old school for the deaf, I found out, and there were definitely entities there as well. Same type of stuff, things touching me, all sorts of bizarre experiences there. And then I started online dating as well, and I met some pretty freaky women, on the Data Cougar website and Match.com. But then again, I was telling them what I was into. I was blacking out and typing stuff into the computer, so anyone that was interested in me obviously was into the same stuff and might have the same issues.
Tell them about the French lady.
There was a woman actually in Montreal who she would speak French to me, and I would immediately black out when I heard the French language. I had no idea what she was saying, but we actually fought. We would speak on the telephone and we would fight. And I would immediately black out after she started speaking French. She'd get upset and she'd go into French, and then I don't know what the issue was there, but something about the French language triggered me. So we never met face to face, but then there were other women who I did meet that did meet me face to face, and I do write about that in the book. I'd rather not go into that right now. Some rather bizarre sexual experiences.
Yeah, I'd prefer it if you didn't.
So I'm not talking about it now. So then, after those experiences, I finally found enough stability to go to Montauk, and I'll circle back just a little bit to the blackouts. When I was blacking out in Rhode Island, I would scribble things on paper. I'm Lucifer, I'm the demons own me. It was from all sorts of different perspectives and personas. I'd wake up from the blackouts and find these notes written, and it would be pretty freaky, pretty scary to see that you're writing these things when you're in a completely unconscious state. And one of the words that came up on a regular basis was Montauk. Um, it didn't make sense to me at the time. What does this word mean? I knew it was a place, and I would see Montauk over and over again, Montauk and the word rape, and lots of angry satanic stuff. So when this occurred, I would throw the notes away. I would soak them in water. I'd do all sorts of weird things because I didn't want anyone to know what I was writing down. Just my ex knew, and of course she would lock herself in the bedroom. I was never violent towards her, by the way. So this word Montauk came up over and over again. And while I was speaking to the deprogrammer, I mentioned this to him, of course, and he said that you might be connected to the Montauk Project, which is kind of an infamous alleged mind control program that occurred in the 1970s and early 80s. And these young boys were programmed to be assassins, to be killers. Jeffrey Dahmer might have been one of them. He has some curiously similar symptoms. Not that I'm saying I did what he did. But in any event, this whole connection to the Montauk Project the suspicion of it had continued, right after I started contacting the deprogrammer. So it was in the back of my mind that I might want to visit this place. It was an old Air Force facility at the tip of Long Island, New York, a very isolated place. And of course, I read anything and everything I could on the Montauk Project. So this research was going on, after I had left my ex, and of course, while I was living at the apartment. And once again, I finally found enough stability to plan a trip there. So I had some time off of work, had some vacation time coming, and I went to Montauk in September of 2011. And I can't say that it triggered any memories, but I can say that I had some pretty bizarre experiences there. The blood that inexplicably appeared on the sheets in the hotel, all sorts of dream state experiences that were definitely not your average dreams. So I shot footage of my trip to Montauk, and you can find that on my website. So that experience, I'm not quite sure what occurred, but afterwards I once again, I became worse. I was cutting myself again. So a downward spiral just got deeper and deeper after that Montauk trip. And then I started interacting with a woman that I had met on the deprogrammer's website. So she frequented the website quite a bit, and then I started speaking with her. She's an older woman, very knowledgeable in mind control. And we started emailing each other. I told her about my experiences. She was a very nice lady, but once again, I was still drinking, and I would email her some pretty freaky stuff, maybe laced with a bit of sexual innuendo, perhaps. And she knew what was happening. She saw that I was triggered, and to be triggered is to go into a different persona. Even if mind control is true, I don't know if it's even real. But she was pretty freaked out by my behavior, and she said overwhelmed by it. So as a result, she said she was friends with a man in New Zealand. This guy in New Zealand that she was interacting with, I didn't know anyone across the other side of the world, but she asked him if he would mind communicating with me because we're very similar. We're the exact same age. We had the same issues. We were searching for meaning in life, and we both had this connection to mind control. So she contacted him and said, "Would you mind talking to this guy? He's a bit crazy, but you might both find some peace by just sharing your experiences." So he and I started emailing each other, and of course became great friends. We're still friends to this day. I just saw him this weekend, and he kept mentioning this woman that was also someone that was on the deprogrammer's website, whose name I can't mention because we're squabbling at the moment. But he mentioned, his name is Seth in the book. He mentioned this woman that was also in New Zealand, and she was very interesting. I saw her name, and I decided, I'd like to talk to her as well. And I kept saying, introduce me to her. And he kept ignoring it for some reason. He kept sidestepping these mentions through email. Excuse me. So finally, he gave me her email address. He of course contacted her first to see if she'd be, interested in speaking to this crazy person. And she agreed to it. She was in a relationship at the time, and so was I. But it quickly became romantic and put us both in a tough spot. So once we started interacting, being someone that's very extreme and obsessive, I tried to woo her. I used everything I could with words. I fancy myself pretty good with words when I need to be, as far as being persuasive. So 5 months after our initial email, I was on a plane to New Zealand, and here I am now, almost 3 years later, still here. And then that circles back to the book itself, because I had still been up to my nonsense with blacking out for about a year and a half until my organs started to hurt, and I knew I had to stop drinking, and I think she was getting sick of the nonsense as well. So having been in New Zealand and then starting the blog, this is what really has helped me heal. A lot of folks have called it an ego trip, or why are you sharing this? All I can say is I've been paranoid for a good part of my life about writing down dreams or talking to anybody about these experiences for fear of being committed or what have you, losing my job. So just sharing it and getting it out there has vented a sort of psychic chaos within me, and it's kept me stable. I'm much better. I'm still the same person to a degree, but I'm much healthier now, and that's a result of sharing the experiences, writing the book. Definitely correlates with that. So that's the reason I'm sharing this, and that's the reason I wrote the book and will continue to write. There's a whole lot more in between I didn't share, of course, because I'd like you to read the book and let me know what you think. A lot of folks have read the blog, have had great feedback on that. And if somebody reads it and is entertained, that's fantastic. If it has a deeper meaning to you, then all the better. So after, of course, finishing the book, I decided I'd like to start writing horror fiction, perhaps. That stuff always seems to filter through my mind. Maybe I can take advantage of it. And also, I recently did a radio show with a fellow over in Australia who seems to think I'm possessed, whatever that means. And he and I are discussing possibly me going over there for an exorcism. What I can say is that I don't necessarily believe I'm possessed, if you want to call it that, anything, as far as the Exorcist or anything of that nature, like horror films. I might have some spirit attachments, but it would be an interesting experience, I think, to go over to Australia just to see what would happen internally, psychologically, with this so-called exorcism, and then write about it, as another adventure and as something I'm trying to get closer to my memories. Something happened in my childhood. I don't know what it is. I can't seem to remember. I've had flashes of things, but there's a whole lot more there that I haven't uncovered. So as a result, maybe this exorcism, if it does something to me psychologically, will reveal some memories. I don't know. I mean, I'm still adventurous. I was a bit reckless when I conjured the demons. Maybe doing this is reckless as well. But if there's a chance to get some answers, then I'm willing to take the risk. So that'll be next up for me. Doing that and continuing to write. As far as the book goes, it's at $2.99 at the moment on Kindle, and it's at $12 in print. And these lower prices will be in effect, for a short period. So take advantage of it. Get a copy of the book. Read the whole story. I've only scratched the surface here. And if you do read it, I'd be greatly appreciated if you could put a short review up on my Amazon authors page. And I've got some ideas for other books aside from the exorcism experience. So I hope you continue to check out the blog and the website as well. And aside from that, for those that have been reading my blog, I really appreciate it. I've had some great feedback, lots of supportive words, and I've made some great friends as well. With the humorous aspect, I tend to be, I joke a bit online, and I tend to skirt the boundary as far as, am I really supporting this demonic stuff, or am I trying to get away from it? The healing process is never, a straight line. It can be very asymmetrical. I'm doing it in my own way. I'm definitely healthier now that I've been writing. But yes, the subject of the occult and demons, I'm still fascinated by that because I haven't healed, I think, or I haven't found the memories I need that are connected to that. So yes, I still write about it, and if I joke, it's not because this is all a hoax or sham or I'm being cavalier. You need humor, you need levity. Humor dispels the negative energies. It really does.
So what has the people, your readers, take on your book been so far? What sort of feedback have you had?
Excellent feedback so far. I've got 3 reviews up, and lots of other folks that are in the process of reading it. They enjoy the book. They think it's easy to follow, and a whole lot more information is there. The blog entries are part of the book, but I've fleshed it out quite a bit, and I've added a lot more content, a lot more detail around the experiences. So they've really enjoyed it, and I know you will too. So check it out if you're into horror, if you're into the occult, if you're into the paranormal, or mind control. Any of those subjects. It basically straddles all of those different genres or niches, if you will. So I think anyone that's in those particular areas is going to find something in the book that they'll enjoy. And you know where to find me on Facebook. I always like to talk about this stuff and interact, so you can definitely find me there. And I really appreciate your time today. For those of you that have tuned in, and this will be available as a link to watch after the fact as well. Anything else that Louise would like to add? Louise, who wrote the foreword to the book and shared her experiences with me in graphic detail. When I was blacking out when I first arrived here, she put up with a lot, and love her to bits for dealing with that stuff.
Well, I want to know how you feel about the whole process that you've gone through. You know, because when you started writing the blog, you were so adamant that it wouldn't do anything for you.
I resisted it. I resisted it so much.
It.
It's, whatever, I'm not going to write, and then I have a job to keep, or they'll put me away. I'm in a small country, and I was still, you know, in the process of becoming a resident. I didn't want to, you know.
I got so sick of you getting drunk and crying and growling every night that I was
crying and growling.
We have to find an avenue.
Some women are into that. I thought you were. So.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But we have to find an avenue for you to release all your frustration and pent up energy, and pretty much that's what you did. And how do you feel now? Do you feel more balanced, or?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't feel like I have to black out. When I lived in Rhode Island, if I didn't get to black out and go crazy every weekend, I was depressed. I mean, if we had some sort of family event or we had to go away for the weekend, I would never black out in front of anyone, aside from my ex. It would only be like one person I'd select to black out in front of, because then I could just say, she's crazy. It didn't happen. So it was a bit manipulative there, but I never blacked out in front of anyone except maybe one person. So what was the question again?
How do you feel now in comparison to then when you were blacking out? And I mean, your blackout was very much like a crutch for you, wasn't it? I remember you were addicted to it. You had to have it on a Friday and a Saturday night.
I couldn't function during the week to go to work and not to be able to release that. I don't black out anymore. I've had a few issues here and there, but I don't black out anymore to that extent, or at all. So the writing, the sharing, the interacting has definitely helped. Saved my life, really.
Do you miss it? Do you still miss it?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are nights where I have a couple of glasses of wine, hear 80s music, and I want to go there. But I mean, it's not life or death. Where before it was, I had to do it. I would just be devastated if I couldn't black out and get out of my body. I had to have that, and it was a roll of the dice, because who knows what was going to happen. I sealed myself into the house with tape one time when I was alone, when my ex was away, because I needed to just go crazy, and I had to get out of my body. And I taped every window, it's in the book, every window and door shut, so that I could escape myself. And it was horrible. I woke up naked and bloody. I mean, it was just stuff that you just, very dramatic, I know, but it's true. And I needed to get away from that. And I think I have. I don't need to black out anymore. But yeah, it's definitely a tempting thing for sure.
So what stops you?
What stops me? Well, I certainly don't want to. I just had a kid. I mean, I've never.
I see you're addicted to marketing now.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, let's face it. Some folks have had issue with my, calling it spam. If you're gonna share your story, you have to get it out there. There has to be a way to do that, and it is a fine line between, in marketing, is it ego? Are you pushing this on people? I'd like to share the story because it's part of my healing process. Whenever I interact with a new person that says, "Oh, these things have happened to me," or "these things have happened to someone I know," and I've had no ability to build any context around it. It's wonderful to do that, or if somebody's just curious about it. So yeah, the interacting helps, but you have to, if you write a book, you put a lot of work into it. You have to market it to get it out there. And I like to put it in, in an audio book, get it into bookstores. I think it's a unique enough story. I've lived in a bubble so long that little bits of information about my life would leak to people, and they'd say, "Oh, you're freaking crazy. I'd be like, well, that was just my normal. So I think it's a unique enough story where it would have some broad appeal. And why not? But yeah, marketing, sure.
Well, Antoinette says you should write more for sure it's addicting to read so far, which is a good thing.
Well, thank you, Antoinette. I will be writing more. It's the one thing that makes me happy. Of course, my family makes me happy, but we all need something that we do, I think, creatively as human beings. So as far as the writing goes, I'm going to continue doing that. The next adventure will definitely be going to Australia and to see what this exorcism does. I mean, is it going to make me crazier? No, I don't think so. I'm going to bring Seth with me. Seth is coming along. I used to send some pretty freaky, demonic emails to Seth, and he was one of the few people that could handle them. So he's a close friend that's going to come as a protector and make sure these people don't mess with my head too much. Because Brett, I'm sure you're watching. Brett is the fellow that I did the radio interview with in The Exorcist. Not that I don't trust you, but everyone has to protect themselves. I'm not quite sure if there is an agenda. I suspect there isn't, but I've always been a bit too trusting, maybe. So let's see what happens. Maybe it'll be a controlled collision.
I don't think it's just against Brett. I think it's about you and what's inside of you.
And what could be triggered.
And you need someone who's really close to you to be there to make sure everything's okay.
But once again, Brett, if I didn't like you or didn't trust you, I wouldn't even think about it. But I have had other people actually chime in and say, "Wow, you got to be careful. You don't know this guy." But we'll see what happens. Trust the universe and trust the trust the path it takes me on.
Yeah. So where we're at the moment is we've got 5 people in chat. I'm connected now.
Okay.
If you need me to go anyway. And I think according to your agenda, you're going to start reading about the book, or?
Yeah, we've gone over the chapters themselves. Any questions you have, folks, you want to chime in? If you think my story is nonsense, or you think, I'm just making this up, any kind of input. I've had people disagree with me, and some people even attack me. I'm so used to it by now. So if you have any kind of input that might be construed as, maybe not in line with what I'm saying, I have no issue with that at all. And I never respond aggressively to anything like that. It's just in poor taste. And last thing you want to do is get into a confrontation online with anyone. But I have had that happen quite a bit. I'm just sharing the story because it's healthier for me. And I've come a long way. I mean, years ago, I wouldn't even think to write my dreams down. They were so freaky. And mind control books that I had read secretly, I'd tear the cover off on the train and read them, and then I would soak them in buckets of water and tear them to bits because, heaven forbid, someone saw what I was reading.
What about the women that have been contacting you with regards to, like, the woman you trigger? Because at one stage there, you were triggering a heap of people. Yeah,
well, the content it's definitely sexual in nature. Actually skirted over one of the chapters as far as the sexual control. But yeah, it's quite sexual in nature. I think sexuality for us, we're all conditioned that it's something to be embarrassed about, something that can be yucky or just better left unaddressed. Sexuality creates life. And it's one of the most potent forces in the universe. So I shared that stuff because mind control and also your ability to manifest things in your life, I believe, is definitely connected to sexuality. So I even did some sexual manipulation with Louise to get her to agree to have me come over to New Zealand. And I told her afterwards, and she was pissed off.
Oh.
Yeah. So I mean, this stuff is
party to it.
No, she had no idea. But it hasn't worn off. So. I would think it hasn't, otherwise.
Someone saw us, Antoinette saw us in our pajamas last night during a test.
Oh my God, no! I thought you said it wasn't, Oh my God. Antoinette, what did you see? It's terrible.
She says,
wait a minute.
Both in pajamas, does that make us besties?
Absolutely, Antoinette. Oh my God, I think I actually, did you see? I flashed the camera because I just do it for fun because it freaks her out. I hope you didn't see me flash the camera. Yeah. So this is, like I said, the laughter part. I'm much happier now. And if any of you think, I think Alric, if you're watching, he said it was a bit disconcerting that my level of as far as joking, with the subject matter. If it's too serious and too heavy, it will actually magnetize negative energies. You can't have this grave seriousness about you. It will attract things of a like nature. So I try to keep it light and how can you not laugh at some of this stuff? I mean, it's really it's out there. I know that, but that's been my life. So, anything else?
No, I think we can move on to you reading excerpts from the chapters now. There's no questions in the.
Okay. Well, I probably would like to talk about my mother a bit because the mother issues. I dedicated a whole chapter to that because I grew up. It's one of the few people I don't mind exposing. Being connected to me is my mom, who is psychotic alcoholic. I mean, if I inherited anything as far as psychological issues, alcoholism, possibly mind control, it would definitely be my mother. She just has all of the classic symptoms of someone being mind controlled. And even Yuri, who I call the deprogrammer in my book, named Yuri, he alluded to, after I described my mother and my experiences with her, alluded to the fact that she was probably mind controlled, but the programming didn't go in correctly, and it left her crazy in her outer life. Whereas I think in my outer life, when I walk out the door into the world, I behave and I do everything I can to keep my personality at bay, even though it doesn't work.
Well, that's something your father taught you, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, as far as being well behaved and presenting yourself to the world in a credible manner. But my mother was just completely the opposite, and I haven't been able to contact her. And she's just, I liken her to kind of like a reptile that just laid eggs and slithered away. I mean, I don't hate the woman, but she's nowhere to be found, and I know she's kind of a key to all of this. So I talk about my mother. The chapter's called "My Mother the Demon." I miss her because when I black out, there's a pattern that's followed, and whenever I black out, I start crying, and my mother always comes up, and then I start getting demonic and growling, and this pattern has been discovered by Louise. And she's, obviously knows that there's some issue with I don't know if there was abuse with my mother. She did leave me with abusive babysitters, and that part of my life is definitely a huge a huge bit of amnesia is there. I mean, I remember bits and pieces of things, but there are people that remember being 3, 4, 5 years old. I remember nothing about that. It's a complete blackout for me, if you will. So I talk about my mother in this, I don't know what excerpt. I didn't actually plan to read anything about this, but I'll just describe my experience with her. We lived in dingy apartments together. She would drink a lot. She would burn incense. It was kind of had a very occultic quality to it. She was a very angry woman. She would drink and her eyes would blaze red, and she had lots of boyfriends. There was all kinds of sexual things that would happen around me that I was privy to. She would black out and I'd see her naked as a little kid. It was just obviously didn't have a very good effect on my psyche. But my mother is somebody that I would like to find so that I can kind of pick her brain and see maybe that there's some sort of a clue in there. So instead of reading excerpts from the book, I think it's just probably better just to describe those things from, and let you read the specifics yourself. But my mother is definitely a key to all of this, I think. And ultimately, I'd like to find her, and I don't hate her. I mean, I don't know how I feel about her because she's kind of a stranger to me, really. Do we have anything else on the agenda that we wanted to? I don't want to bore everyone here.
Did you read an excerpt?
I'm going to read an excerpt from it.
Yeah, that's what you do for Curly's party.
Okay, well, I'll talk about movies because movies had a huge effect on me, and they still do. So I'll read another movie that really messed with my mind was Midnight Express, and which was released in 1978, so I was 6 years old at the time. My mom dropped me off to see that movie by myself. She would often use the movie theater as a babysitter. And it's about an American sent to prison for trying to smuggle hashish out of Turkey. And believe me, my opinion of the land, called Turkey is, if I run into a Turkish person, I mention that movie and they give me dirty looks. I think that it kind of tarnished the world's view of the country, which I'm sure is a beautiful place with beautiful people. But in the movie, there's extensive torture, psychosis, despair, and I was, 6-year-old sitting alone watching that movie. The soundtrack in particular pushes my crazy button. Whenever I hear the music from that movie, I start to get dizzy, literally. I don't know what happens, but I spiral quite a bit, and quite often when watching that film, I would black out afterwards, or during a blackout or very deep into a blackout, I would seek out the movie. And only Louise would know that because I was so deep into blackout I didn't know I was playing the music or watching the film. Is that what happened? Find Midnight Express?
Yeah, you would just call into a little ball and start crying like a baby.
Yeah. So whether or not the time period, somehow there's some memory encoded in the time period, I don't know, but that movie definitely triggers something within me. So that was my experience with my mother. She also, what she had a knack for was, let's see, she would lock me out of the apartment. Not that I'm trying to tell a tale of woe and get any sympathy, but she did all sorts of, I think, neglectful and abusive things, whether it was conscious or not, to really affect me at that age. And then eventually I moved back out to Boston, lived with my dad, and things were much more stable. But then again, my behavior at that age, I started cutting myself at 7 years old. And wiping the blood on my ventriloquist puppet. So and whether or not that has a connection to mind control or the occult, I suspect it does. But I compared notes with other people, and I don't recall anyone else saying, yeah, at that age you cut yourself and wipe it on puppets. I mean, so obviously this behavior pattern is indicative of something, some issue, some abuse, or that's repressed. And maybe my psyche does not want to show me these things. What? So anyway, instead of reading excerpts, I'd rather just kind of touch upon different areas and then elaborate on them. So let's see, any other particular areas?
Read a juicy paragraph. I love it.
You read a juicy paragraph? Okay.
Did you not have one chosen?
Okay, I didn't have one chosen. So let's see, what do you think would be interesting? Okay. Let's see.
The one with your mother.
Okay, you mean
what? Lie on the couch.
That's pretty sexual, though, I think. Let's see here. Bear with me just a moment, folks. Louise put me on the spot with this excerpt reading, which I didn't see here.
It's a part of the agenda.
Is it? No, it wasn't.
No, I see it. I'm looking at it. It's part of the agenda.
No, it was not. It was just to touch upon each chapter and to elaborate on them. It wasn't about... Okay, so here I found it. After eventually falling asleep, some sort of moaning sound woke me up. This was one night where my mother was drunk. The TV was still on, and I saw my mom on the couch completely naked, her legs open with one leg dangling off the floor. I looked at her vagina, confused and groggy. Remember, I was 6 years old. And then a movie trailer came on, and the movie trailer was for The Shining. So would it came out 78? Anyway, it was just about to come out, or it had come out. And I was watching the scene where the kid was running through that maze in the snow. And, of course, looking at my mother's private parts at that age and seeing a horror film trailer really had an effect on me, and it cemented itself in my psyche. So aside from the few visual snippets of childhood I do have, these are among the more scant thought memories from that time period. So the Scary Shining trailer is playing in the background. It's 3:15 a.m. I do remember the time, and I'm staring at my mom's vagina. I remember envisioning her nailed to a cross, and this is, I mean, of the few things I remember, why did I remember this? I remember envisioning her nailed to a cross like Jesus. Easter's coming up, look at that. And I wondered if I should be eating her brain or heart, and that thought has never left me. I mean, that's pretty gruesome, pretty macabre, pretty indicative of some serious issues. What can I say? I'd rather share it now than, I've repressed it too long. It is who I am. But why that image came into my head at that time after seeing, her naked and the horror film trailer, I can't imagine. I mean, what connection does it have, or was it just random? I don't know. But that certainly did occur. And let's see here. Anything else you want to read about Mommy? Yeah, I call her Mommy. I know it's strange. Oh well. I didn't know the truth. I've got some other issues that I write about in the book as well. But hey, everybody has what they're into. So let's see here. Running from demons and mind control. Another thing I wanted to share too is that with Yuri, after I had gone off the rails, and Yuri is the deprogrammer, I wanted to meet him. So I sent some money to him and to enroll in one of his conferences in Michigan. And basically, I was excited to meet him. Maybe I can get to the bottom of this issue with the mind control. And this was right before I left my ex. And I was devastated because I was sent an email back saying your registration has not been accepted. I guess I was so crazy and so out of control at the time, they didn't want me at their conference. So if you can imagine that, sending somebody $500 to go to their conference, and they were like, nope, you're too nuts, man. You use the emails that you send us, forget it. So I was crushed that I couldn't go because I wanted to get to the bottom of the issues. I thought that might help. That was part of what precipitated me leaving my ex. I was just so depressed. And then after being banned from that conference, that's when I left. And
so we have a question from Antoinette, and she wants to know if you can speak more about the symbolism in movies, maybe also going back to Fight Club.
Oh, for sure. Antoinette, I'm not an expert on these things. I've done my studying up on it. But as far as the symbolism goes, I mean, if you look at, I can speak more on triggering, I think, in particular with the movie Fight Club. There's all sorts of symbolism as far as having alter personalities. When I first saw Fight Club, I didn't know about the whole aha moment about the movie where the two main characters were actually the same person. And then once I saw that, Tyler Durden and Edward Norton's character were actually the same person, I mean, that's what really triggered my whole obsession with it, because I wasn't exposed to the idea of multiple personalities before. And then I thought, I think it was more subconscious, I thought, wow, is this what's going on with me when I black out? I mean, do I have two, maybe more people within me? And this was before I had started studying mind control, but it flipped a switch in me. So with movies, depending on what they use movies, even I don't know. I have no proof myself, but I have a pretty good Hello, folks. Oh, we're having issues with our internet. So we're going to wrap it up now. For those of you that...
There's a few more questions.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
So, I think Antoinette's asking questions there. She says, yes, I believe it is all triggers as well. Do you believe multiple people share multiple similar triggers?
From what I understand from my experience with it, triggering is very specific to the individual. It's how you were programmed and what triggers were laced into which alters. But I definitely think that the triggers they put into films, they're not directed towards specific individuals. So I would think that there are general triggers that go out to certain types of mind control people. I can't imagine them spending time and money. It's some other issue going on here, Mommy. But I can't imagine them spending all that money just to trigger one individual. So I think there are definitely triggers that they go out to people with certain programs in them, depending on the type of program. Let's say sexual programming. If you watch like the movie Sucker Punch with the girls in the institution, or it's been many years. That movie left me with headaches and depression for weeks afterwards. I mean, I really was affected by it. So there were triggers in that film that were, I think, specific to me. But that being said, I'm sure there are obviously many other people with mind control. But I think that the triggers is still working. The triggers in the films, I think what happens is yeah. Maybe just ask.
That's working.
As far as the triggers in the films go, what I think happens is that there's a main trigger that can affect many people, and then their own individual triggers are then, it's like a domino effect. That main trigger can affect maybe thousands of programmed people, and then that trigger will actually activate other triggers specific to them, and then you watch their behavior start to spiral. So I think that as far as is that the question? As far as the triggers go?
She goes, yes, I believe it's all triggers as well. Do you believe multiple people share multiple similar triggers? That was the question.
Yeah, absolutely. There definitely multiple people do. But then I do think that ricochet effect, Louise and I have analyzed my triggers and my behavior, and it's like a slow burn. Something affects me, 1 week, and then slowly but surely my behavior starts to get aggressive or depressed or something extreme. And then before you know it, I'm freaking out, or you notice that the triggers are definitely, it's not so obvious. They can be quite subtle.
It's gradual.
Yeah, it's a gradual process.
It's a gradual, there's like a hidden trigger, and then there's multiple triggers after that.
Yeah, it's actually quite fascinating and insidious if you think about it. If you just separate yourself from the fact that yes, it's negative and it's evil and it shouldn't be happening, but very clever from whoever created this stuff. I just know that I can't say it's true. I can't prove it, but I can say the effect it's had on my life if it does indeed exist. I don't know.
And then she said, because I've researched and found when people talk of being triggered, it always comes back to similar triggers in relation to each other. It will depend how you were programmed, really.
How you were programmed, and also I think sometimes certain programs have more of an effect on you in your life. Some stick and some don't, I think, or some go dormant. And depending on what you expose yourself to, I think on an unconscious level, there are people that somehow know what they should avoid, and they can resist it enough, and then those triggers aren't activated. Whereas other ones, I mean, there are just certain movies I just need to watch, and it is a risk. But I just know that by writing, I have not freaked out. I haven't gone off the rails like I did in the past. But yeah, I mean, I still expose myself to things that are triggering. It's not. They can't switch it on and off. There's some people that judge it and think I'm just, flirting with disaster here, or I'm actually part of their agenda, and I'm actually doing this to trigger other people. I mean, if that's true, I'm not conscious of it. So I'm just doing the best I can to be healthy and not be crazy anymore.
Some other people are joining the stream for a couple of times wrong.
Ah.
Do you know Ulrich?
Ulrich's here, yes. We've been going for about an hour. Okay, so I think they thought it was, because it's just about 2 now here.
So it was very interesting. I had gotten the timing wrong of the event, and I was sleeping, but it seems I've woken up for it.
Hey, Alric, how are you? It's good to hear from you. Glad you could make it. And yeah, the stuff with the time zones, it's confusing as hell for me. I'm not a math person. Once you throw time zones in, I get very confused. So, but we're just going to wrap it up, and it will be it's been recorded. I think it was the most perfectly produced event, but it was all quite honest and sincere. But Alaric, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in. Anything that you're curious about? Who won the?
Somebody else getting.
Okay. So I was discussing the book itself. For those of you that just joined us, discussing the book, we had some good questions on triggers and specific to mind control. And yeah, I've done my best as far as answering them with my. I always say I have limited expertise with this stuff. I'm just groping around in the dark, really. There's plenty online. There's plenty of research one can do. But does that make it true? Does that make you credible? I'm not going to be a self-styled expert on this stuff. I'm still learning, and it's often just trial and error. I think the most important thing is to observe yourself and to observe your behaviors. Really step outside yourself and watch how you think and your random thoughts and the things that you're attracted to or drawn to. Is there a pattern? Has something changed where you're seeking certain things out that you weren't before? This can all be indicative of a trigger process occurring, and it definitely reverberates, throughout. It's not something that just happens, you're triggered, and then you're not anymore. It's definitely a build-up. At least for me, it has been.
Okay. Oh.
But for those of you that did make it, Elric, sorry, man. I've gone on and on for about over an hour. We've had some technical issues as well, so I just want to say thank you all for your patience in dealing with that. There will be a recording of this after I watch it. If I don't think it sucks, I'll put it up. I don't know if it's worthy of going up or not afterwards. But once again, the book is now $12 in print and $2.99 Kindle. If you do read it, I would greatly appreciate it if you could put a review up on the Amazon author page, just a short review. Make it honest. You don't have to say wonderful things about it. You can just be honest about what you thought about the book. Those are the best reviews, are the ones that people can tell when they're just all happy, wonderful stuff, and they know.
Oh, better question. So it says, just a comment, love the henna soundtrack in the exploration videos. Great movie symbolism as well in that movie. So she's talking about the Monarch videos and how we use the henna soundtrack.
Stuff I've been putting up. The Hannah movie really had an effect on me. It really did. It also left me in kind of a funk, but I've watched it several times since then. And Louise cut all of that video, and she put a lot of work into it. I nagged her because I'm 42 and I can't do that stuff. She's 31, 32. She's young and knows how to do all these things.
21.
So 21, there you go. Yeah, that would make me kind of a creep, though. When, 42.
It would make you proud.
So she did all of that. That was her great work. We did collaborate on what music to use, but that was a huge mind control movie, in my opinion, the Hannah film. With all of the the assassin programming and whatnot, really enjoyed that.
I remember the first time you watched it with me, you guzzled like almost 3 liters of wine.
Yeah, that was when I first arrived in New Zealand, and yeah, I mean, what I used to do is I would take huge amounts of speed pills. After I left my ex, I stopped exercising for maybe 15 years, turned into a pot-belly old man, and then once I left her, I had some time to exercise. My long commute was over. And then I went back into my speed addiction, and I would just take tons of speed and work out and then go home and guzzle. I mean, 1.5 to 2 bottles of wine every night of the week. Obviously not healthy, but I was really screwing with my body. And I don't know if that was connected to mind control, slowly destroying myself or not. I can't say. But just lots of up and down stuff that occurred. Found a place of stability now, but, still a bit...
And Elric would like to know... I'd like to hear more about why Yuri and you fell out. If you want to share that. Go.
It's a great question, Ulrich, and many of you that may have read the book or just have been involved in the mind control subject long enough, I'm sure you know who Yuri is. All I can say is that he was very supportive. I thought he had an agenda when we first started communicating. We actually had, swapped 6-7 emails a day. why. I mean, this guy has all these people following him, and he chose to focus on me, but yet didn't try to sell me anything. So I think that the connection was definitely genuine, definitely sincere. I know you're asking about the falling out, and I'm going on about this part. But all I can say about Yuri is that I was writing for him. I had done a deprogramming journal on his website, and right before I left New Zealand, I was in Boston living in my office, because I lived in my office twice. It's a long story. So Yuri's wife had contacted me. Yuri and I have, I mean, literally the emails between us are all saved. I mean, we've got a lot of material there. All of my crazy emails in the beginning. I mean, stuff that right when I first started communicating with him. When I read it now, I was so unstable. So we decided to collaborate on that about 2 years later and do a deprogramming journal on his website. And I thought it was fantastic. I enjoyed it. It was my first step into writing and interacting with folks and kind of sharing, my experiences. And then, what occurred is that I was in New Zealand. I was still writing. We were posting entries from our emails, and then I was elaborating on my current situation in relation to them. And what happened was, for whatever reason, they got really busy. With their website, they've got quite a business. They travel a lot, and I didn't have the outlet anymore. I didn't have the outlet to write because there was nothing going on with that particular collaboration. So I started the blog, and that's why I started writing for myself, because I needed to write more than once every 2 months. I needed to do this every day just to get through my work day. I just can't stand working. So not working, but just doing, I work in an office. It's just dreadfully boring. It wasn't fulfilling me. So I needed to write every day. I didn't have that outlet with Yuri and his website. So I started the blog, and then I started writing for another individual connected to Yuri and his wife. And I think they got upset about that because they wanted me writing exclusively for them. So once they realized that's pretty much the truth.
Well, the thing is that you weren't really writing for them. You were sending them entries, and they were posting them or not posting them.
Yeah, it just wasn't happening. It slowed down.
And then they stopped communicating with you for about 3 months, and your blackouts were getting progressively worse because of the stress we were under at the time.
Yeah.
And that is when I said, why don't you just write your own blog? And if they do come back to you, you can continue to write for them.
Yeah.
And they did come back to you, but they wanted you to be exclusive.
They didn't want me to have my own stuff going on, which was very strange for me. I mean, I thought it would be a mutually beneficial situation where I could write post entries with them and be very reliable with that. I'm a reliable person. If I say I'm going to do something, I will. So I saw no issue with it. I could have both going, and I could have my outlet.
Well, you also had quite a traction and a following building up in your blogspot area.
Yeah.
And that made a lot of sense to keep that, and you don't want to lose that. So I mean, if you
couldn't just stop doing my own thing and just for them. So I explained it to them that I would like to continue both. They, for whatever reason, they weren't happy with that. They also knew that I was writing for another person connected to them, but he had his own business. I'd rather not mention him here. His website is changing now, and I write for him. And I think they didn't like the fact that I was I don't know what it was.
I think you also need to touch on like Yuri and his
confrontational what?
No, his unconventional way of doing things. And how he talks a lot about mind control and programming, and even though he's played a huge catalyst in your life, you really need to touch on how it's not really where you're going. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, my goal is to be healthier. That's what my goal is, and Yuri played a pivotal part in my life because he was a catalyst for me moving out of a bad marriage and really trying to get myself stable. It was definitely asymmetrical. I mean, I got worse before I got better. I would get better, then I would get worse again. And then finding my way to New Zealand was just, I mean, a life-saving experience. I mean, I have a more conventional life now. But for whatever reason, Yuri and I just, our paths, he was not happy with what I was doing on this end and the decisions I made. And, I was still willing to be friends with him, but for whatever reason, I think the issue with the writing for maybe a competitor, I don't know, something to that degree, upset them. And as a result, we don't communicate anymore. And it's been since last October, November that we've communicated. And you know what? It is what it is. I have no animosity toward them at all. I don't have any issue with being friends with them, but they they seem to have taken it the wrong way, that I'm writing for another individual along with my own stuff. That situation is a much better deal for me, and this person's not placing any demands on me to be exclusive to to his site, which I've got a lot of creative energy, and I'd rather get it out than repress it and go back to what I was before. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing
it. Yeah. So that's the reason that I had the falling out with Yuri. But I'd like to.
I don't think it was a falling out. I think it was just an agreement to disagree.
Yeah, we agreed to disagree. I mean, there was no arguing or fighting. And over the years, Yuri and I definitely triggered each other. I mean, with the emails we had a very, I think, bizarre relationship as far as our interactions with each other. We would say freaky things to each other just offhand. It wouldn't be along the line of business. We would just talk some crazy stuff, and I think we triggered each other, and so at times it wasn't healthy, for me, and probably not for him, and that's, I think, part of the reason that Yuri's wife didn't want me at their conference. I think it really had to do with her because of the effect that I had on Yuri, and that's understandable. I mean, they have a business. They don't need some crazy guy showing up to their conference, and they didn't know how I was going to react to being around Yuri, and maybe she didn't know how Yuri would react to me. He insinuated that we had a connection, possibly at Monarch. I don't know. I can't say for sure, but whatever connection we had was something that was creating these triggers between us, and that's where it stands now. And maybe we'll be friends again in the future. I don't know, but I have no issue with them at the moment. Any other questions there, Louise?
Not that I can see. I think we can wrap up.
All right, folks. Well, for those of you that did make it, I really appreciate you coming. Pick up a copy.
No, there's another one. What was creepy about the Order Temple, the OTO?
Oh, the OTO. Well, this is a tough question to answer because a lot of OTO folks, they read my stuff. And the first thing I'm going to say to anybody involved in the OTO and Crowley, I am not an expert on the OTO or magic. I screwed up. We're not sacrificing children here, don't we? I'm not an expert on magic or the OTO. I had a brief experience with both, and what I write about is my ensuing, the effect it had on me. So first of all, the OTO folks say, "Oh, this guy doesn't know his stuff. He doesn't know what he's talking about." I don't. I'm not an expert on that. I know what I know, but I don't delve into it very much anymore. But the OTO folks that moved in when I was demon conjuring, they had lived up the street. They just had a really, I'm not saying that reflects on the OTO, but they just had a really weird vibe about them, and they kind of moved in and took over. It was boyfriend-girlfriend, and they moved in to pick up the slack with the rent because my roommates freaked and they left me alone in a 3-bedroom apartment. So they moved in to help with the rent, but they just brought this astral funk with them that just pushed me over the edge. I had to get out of there. So that's no reflection on the OTO or anybody that's into OTO-related stuff. I interact with folks that are into that, and just as a disclaimer, I'm not claiming to know a whole lot about magic or the OTO, but there are some parallel, I think, interests that we have. So I hope that answers the question. It wasn't the OTO that was creepy, but I was just not in a place. For whatever reason, it triggered me to leave and to move in with the other woman that I was married to.
Okay.
All right. So once again, appreciate you coming by. Sorry it wasn't as organized as we had hoped. Next time we do this, we'll be all the wiser for it.
Next time.
I harass her to do all the technical stuff, and I just write and blabber away. But once again, if you read the book, I really appreciate it if you put up a review on the Amazon page. Any feedback you have, just be honest about it. I can handle it. And it's not an ego trip. Sharing the stories has kept me healthier, and it's leading me down other paths in my life. And like I said, you know where to find me on Facebook, and hope you have a great rest of your weekend. One thing about being in New Zealand is we're a bit ahead, and Friday is great because it's Thursday for you guys, but on Sunday you're still on Saturday, and I'm jealous. So take care, and hope to hear from you all again soon.